Welcome to Animal Posse, the podcast dedicated to the people and rescues making a difference in the lives of animals. Joining me today is Alyssa with Aviary Creature Rescue. And today we are going to be focusing our conversation on the animal welfare crisis that is affecting rescues and shelters in our home state, Louisiana. Hi, Alyssa. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that you started this and are advocating. We need more voices.
Definitely. And I'm hoping to bring rescues together and make people aware of rescues that they didn't know existed out there. The goal is to
Amazing.
save at least one animal, and I think I've done my job.
Yeah, absolutely.
I specifically reached out to you so we could discuss the Louisiana animal welfare crisis because I saw on social media that you were talking about how all these rescues and shelters in Louisiana are closing.
Yes, it is an epidemic at this point. I started seeing it a few years ago. Anyone in rescue knows that COVID changed the game. Like all these people got animals when they were stuck at home and then started giving them up when they went back to work. And everything has ramped up since. And I think the rescues themselves are just out of resources and burnt out. And me personally, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about quitting. And I know that's across the board, especially people who've been doing it longer than me. And then most recently, I've started seeing that parish or government run facilities have started closing or breaking their contracts with the parishes. And it's just getting worse and worse. And it makes me sick to my stomach to think what the future is going to look like if it's already so bad now.
What is your rescue and how long have you been doing this?
So my rescue is called Aviary Creature Rescue. And off the bat, I know that sounds like I rescue birds, but I've been doing this since 2020. I actually started during COVID. I quit my corporate job and started my art studio called the Aviary. And I named it that because I knew I wanted it to mean sanctuary. And I had no idea how literal that term would be taken. And my first rescue pup found me at about the exact same time, and rescue just happened to me. So I just carried that name over because the dream and end goal is to have it to be one big organization. So not an art studio and a rescue. It's just going to be the aviary where my art efforts fund our creatures.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you mainly just do dogs or do you do cats too?
So we have a sister rescue here in St. Mary. It's called ARC, Advocate and Rescue for Companion Animals. And they are a cat rescue that started originally in New Orleans. And then one of their board members is now in our parish. And she's my rescue partner. So they handle the cats of the parish. We handle the dogs. And then we're also boots on the ground for wildlife rescue. We are not licensed rehabbers, but we will go out and like I've caught pelicans and owls and things like that. And we will either transport to LSU, which is our only vet hospital that takes wildlife, or a licensed rehabber in the area.
I know a lot of people aren't going to be too familiar with St. Mary Parish. So, where exactly is St. Mary Parish and would it be considered a rural parish in Louisiana?
Yeah, we're extremely rural. So we are way down the bottom of the map, halfway between Lafayette and New Orleans. And it's legitimately nothing but swamp right below us. We're the last stop before it turns to swamp. It's not a large area, but it's mostly rural. So there are a couple small towns in it, and it's very spread out. So we only have one very small parish shelter that's serving the whole parish, and they stay at capacity. And then there's my rescue and the cat rescue that are serving, that do the boots on the ground rescue.
It's just you two in the parish.
There is one other group that focuses on advocating out of the shelter. But yeah, we're the only ones who actually will take in animals, foster, adopt, that sort of thing.
Okay, so let's get on to what you're seeing as far as the animal welfare crisis. I know I've done a few shows on this before where people have mentioned it. Of course, this was in other states, but I'm in Louisiana, so I directly see it in Louisiana as well.
Mm.
So explain what you're seeing exactly.
It's awful. There's no sugarcoating it. A lot of days, I don't even want to leave my house because when I leave, I have to put blinders on. There are not only strays everywhere, we haven't gotten to the point in our parish, thank goodness, where there's actual feral packs. But in a lot of our sister parishes, like right next door to us is New Iberia, there are multiple feral packs of dogs that roam. And I know there are laws, but it depends on who you call and how they're going to be treated. For example, one of the worst things we see around here is the way owned pets are kept, especially bully breeds. The chains that they're on and the lack of houses that they have, and they'll just be out in the elements. I can't tell you how many times I've called the cops because the dog is either freezing or in the rain or chained up, chained so heavy, it's probably heavier than them. And a lot of times, a blind eye is turned to it because there are a lot of reasons we're given. Small parish, not a lot of resources. So the answer is most of the time, oh, is there food and water and some sort of shelter? And that can even be if the dog has room to crawl under a mobile home, they'll count that as shelter. And then we're not able to do anything about it. And on the other hand, if the animal is given permission to be seized from the governing authority that goes out, then it has to go to the shelter, which means someone else has to die to make space for this one. And it's really just a vicious cycle.
Do you see a lot of pets being rehomed or either returned to you or surrendered to the shelter?
All the time. I've had to leave so many Facebook groups because I just can't stand to see it anymore. Every single day, people need a new home, giving up this animal. And most of the time, they haven't had any vetting. You ask them about heartworm status or spay neuter, and they're like, nope, never been to the vet. And then at the shelter, I know they're intaking almost daily, whether it's picked up from police or people wanting to surrender. It's really awful. And I don't want to judge because I know a big part of the reason some of these people give up their animals is because they can't afford it. And times are hard. I get it. But there have to be more resources to help. There's nowhere for these animals to go. And just killing them all repeatedly to keep making space for the next ones to come in, it's not a solution.
I know I see this in rescue frequently here in the New Orleans area.
Hmm.
And it's something that kind of aggravates me is there are people who need to rehome their pets. Like you said, they're going to get
Hmm.
evicted, can't afford it. They move into hospice. And
Hmm.
I'm finding that a lot of those pets are being actually like turned away because you have also these people that are just abandoning their responsibility. Oh, I don't have enough time for my pets. You try to offer a solution and they're not open to any kind of suggestions if they're having like a behavioral issue or anything like that. And I just find it's really putting a burden on the ones that do desperately need help.
Exactly. It makes it harder for the ones who do have good intentions. So, one of the hardest parts we always say in rescue, it's not the animals and the cases, and we see horrible things, but we know that we're there helping them. It's people that makes this job so much harder because the lack of compassion and the lack of empathy. Like you said, we'll try to provide resources. So when someone reaches out wanting to surrender, we always ask a bit about why, what's going on. If it's a matter of you need food, we can get you some food donations. Or if we have an extra crate on hand, if that's the problem, we'll help. But these folks, and it turns out to be the same ones over and over, at least in my area, that's what I see. It's a shiny new puppy or new kitten, and then it gets a little bit older and they say they don't have time or the hair is too much or this or that. And even with respect to giving us time to find help, a lot of these people will be like, I'm moving tomorrow. It has to go now. And we explain to them it doesn't happen overnight. We can't just pull something out of the air and find space for this creature. Are you willing to hold it for a day or two or find a family member? Give us some time. And even then, more often than not, they're just unwilling. And then they try to flip it and put it on your conscience and say, if you're not going to help, it's just going to the pound, which is so frustrating because at that point it is on our conscience, right? Once you know about it, you can't not know about it. So it's so frustrating that this buck is passed on whenever it was their pet, it was their family member, and they are just so unwilling to do the bare minimum. And not everyone, again, I don't want to generalize. There are some really good folks out there, but by and large, the crisis is fueled by really irresponsible and uncaring folks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too, because I see it firsthand. I was contacted today and I actually have some time to work on it, but it was a lady who had to go move into an assisted living facility. But at least in that case, we have more time to work with. We have, I think, about 2 weeks to try to get something
Awesome.
done, which I mean, at least 2 weeks is better than I'm moving tomorrow. But
Exactly. Still not easy, but at least you can breathe a bit. Yes.
and so
Yeah.
it's like you want to help people like that. But then,
Mhm.
like you said, you have these ones that just are like, okay, if you can't take it, I'm going to go drop it off. I'm going to go dump it. I don't care what happens to it. And
Exactly.
I do find it's definitely fueled by this irresponsibility. And the question is like, how do you really even change that?
That is such a loaded question. And I'm very much, let's not put a band aid on it. Let's get to the root of the problem. And that does not work in rescue. I've learned it's like beating your head against the wall because honestly, the only thing that's going to save us is strict spay neuter laws and breeder control. So, something like breeders have to have a license that it gets checked through the state, just like rabies, right? And only so many litters would be allowed per year, like a license deal. But I don't really foresee that happening in Louisiana. And the spay neuter control, there's clinics offered, but it's just not enough. And so many of these folks, especially in our parish, are low income. So we try like mad. We even offer transport whenever people are rarely willing to pay for it. A lot of the people that reach out to us don't even have vehicles. It's really rough.
So now in that case, you said you'll pick them up and bring them to a clinic for them?
Yeah, we have a whole team of volunteers that is specifically drivers. So in those cases, we try to coordinate whenever we have pets going and we'll transport them ourselves just to make sure they get spay and neutered. But then there's another level that makes it difficult is we don't have support within our parish for low cost spay neuter. So we have to drive a minimum of 45 minutes for the closest clinic to an hour and a half to Spay Nation or some of these larger organizations. So we're burdened by that transport as well.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It all around it is a sad situation. With your rescue, are you foster based or do you have a physical shelter where you can house some of the animals?
Unfortunately, we're foster based, and I use that term very loosely because we started out with about 10 fosters several years ago. And for one reason or another, personal things have changed for folks and capacities have changed. And we're down to two fosters, and the rest of my dogs are in boarding facilities in the New Orleans area. So we are paying a lot of money, and we could help a lot more dogs if we had more fosters. But right now, we're burdened by that boarding bill for it's about $15 a day per dog, and I have 7 dogs living in boarding full time. So you do the math, it adds up really quickly. So we can't help as much as we used to, but we're trying, especially with the emergency cases. We can't really help owner surrenders like we used to unless it's a small dog that we have a partner that we know would take it quickly. So we focus on the injured or dumped. I trap a lot of dogs who have been dumped way out in the cane fields around no houses. And of course, most of our animals are bully breeds because not many folks touch those anymore. Those don't get adopted very quickly either. So we're sitting on dogs who have been with us sometimes 1 to 2 years.
Now, in your area, is it primarily the bully breeds that you're seeing?
Yes, almost everything we pick up is mixed with a bully. And don't get me wrong, they are my favorite dogs, my absolute favorites. That's why we focus on them and seniors. I focus on seniors a lot, but they come with a stigma, and a lot of them come with a lot of trauma. We've gotten dogs from actual dog fighters before. We've taken in dogs that were covered in really insane wounds that I know a lot of people use the term bait dog loosely, and we never have proof, but some of the trauma they come in, you can just tell they were living really horrifically. So it's not just like a cute fluffy we take in, put it up for adoption. There's intense rehab that goes on physically and emotionally.
So do you have any animal cruelty investigators in your area that would look into those types of situations when you get those dogs?
It's a great question. We don't have any actual investigators. That's their job or any sort of police force. I mean, it just goes back to the police. And a lot of times they don't have the capacity to look into these cases the way they would be able to if we had an actual like animal investigator. So I'll do a lot of the legwork. A good example is last year, there was a pit bull we named Olive that was found chained to a tree in the middle of the cane field and had been shot, I think, 7 or 8 times. And she was brought to the shelter before I found out about it and euthanized because of the injuries. But I caught wind about it the next morning and I raised hell. I reached out to Jeff Dorson with the Humane Society of Louisiana, and together we partnered to raise a reward fund and we opened up a tip line. And because of all of that, tips came in that actually led to the arrest of the guy who did it. It's a dream to have the actual investigators that could do that part because we're such a small organization running the whole parish. I can't investigate the way I wish we could. Like a lot of times we have to just accept it and say the dog is safe, and we really don't have the resources to dig in. It's really unfortunate.
It is. At least you did get some justice for her, though.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a big painting of her on my wall, and looking at what we talk about her, that one, that was a really heavy case, but getting justice for her, I think it showed the public like this is possible. We just have to speak up more.
You had mentioned earlier that in neighboring parishes, you have problems with the feral dog packs. What kind of problems do the feral dog packs cause?
So a lot of times we'll see posts about them either getting to wildlife, or I'm sorry, not wildlife, domestic animals like chickens, or they'll be traveling and they'll attack cats, neighborhood cats, things like that, because dogs, they're not bad, but whenever they have a pack mentality, especially when they're feral, they're not, they haven't been part of a family. They haven't been around other animals. A lot of these dogs are born on the street, and we rescued one last year, and he was this beautiful little black Aussie mix. Gorgeous. We thought we could quickly place him, and that was my first eye-opening experience with a truly feral dog. He was born on the street, never knew people, and was trapped by the parish. And he was so incredibly shut down, truly did not know what it meant to be a pet or with humans, was just terrified of everything, even after months. So that's what these dogs are experiencing. They're borderline wild animals. So, one, you can't just call them up to you and start feeding them. And I'm sure some of them are domesticated rather easily, but for the rest of them, they just have that wild dog pack mentality and they're roaming and fending for themselves and just stuck in survival mode.
Are they a danger to people when they're like that?
I haven't personally seen any cases where they've attacked people. I'm sure it exists, but most of the time it's just they got to a cat or someone's pet or something like that. I'm sure it's possible, especially once the packs grow and depending on the amount of resources available and how hard they're fighting to live. But I haven't seen anything like that so far. Thank goodness.
Being that you are in a small parish, do you have a problem with people knowing where you are and dumping animals on you?
That is a great question. So far, knock on wood, I have not had any animals dumped at my home. But I think there is the mentality that people know we exist and they dump them assuming that we're going to go get them, especially if it's someone who's reached out and asked us to take them. And then we couldn't at the time. I suspect that some of those get dumped. So anytime someone reaches out, the first thing we do is ask for photos in case that dog shows up later. And then on that, another issue with the surrender is some of the municipalities around here, whenever folks will call the police to surrender, because you have to go through the police before the shelter, some of these towns charge people a fee to surrender these dogs. So these people who already can't afford to keep them, and that's the reason they're trying to surrender, then they have to pay to surrender and can't afford that. So then these dogs end up dumped because these folks feel like they have no other option. But real quick, as far as people knowing where I live, I got donated a van a couple years ago to use for transport for the rescue, and it was the Scooby-Doo Mystery Machine, and it was fantastic, and we had big dreams of fixing it up, and it was parked in my driveway, and because of that, people knew where I lived, and I had this really scary instance with this family who I had repeatedly picked up their dog for roaming, and the last time it was picked up, They knew it was at the police station, but they retaliated and came to my home and were beating on my windows and doors and screaming at me. And I had to sit on the couch watching this happen until the sheriff's department came and made them leave. Yes, that's an added layer and stress, not just the fear of them dumping animals on us, but there's a real fear for safety whenever you're pushing all these buttons and being an outspoken advocate. Folks do not like it.
So I have to ask, is the mystery machine up and running?
So we donated it to one of our fosters who does most of our transports, and her husband's a mechanic. So they fixed it up really well. Shout out Michelle and Daniel. And now they do cross country transports for not only our rescue, but other Louisiana rescues.
That's great. We just bought actually an emergency donut vehicle. We were looking to buy an old ambulance to repurpose for mobile adoptions and transport. And
Oh, I love that.
the one we got was an emergency donut vehicle. So until we can get a until we can get a wrap, it's currently an emergency feline vehicle. We just cover it up donut with feline. But
Amazing. Points for originality. That's awesome.
with the animal welfare crisis in Louisiana, you said stricter laws, but what do you think the steps are to take care of this problem? What can we do as animal advocates? And I guess what do we need to get the general public who might not be an animal advocate, I guess, on our side?
I think people need to be more aware of not only the crisis, but the resources that are available and the steps it takes to get them. So I think maybe public forums, that's something that's been on our list for a while to try here. So just to call the community out and have a night with local law enforcement and get just a conversation going about what the resources are and see if anyone has any ideas to make things better in our area. And I think if every area did that and had more community support, things would be different. And also the spay neuter, I think it's really important that every single vet practice offers some sort of low cost. There's no reason I say that. I can't speak for them. Obviously, they're private businesses, but it's really wild that in our entire parish, we don't have a vet clinic that offers low cost. So a lot of these people will call in and then get frustrated and say, we can't afford that. And not just the spay neuter, but general medical. There have been so many times where we've had to make posts and ask for donations for elderly people who have a very sick animal that may just need to be euthanized, and they can't even afford to do that.
You had also said that your shelter charges a surrender fee.
So I don't think this shelter, I'm sorry to interrupt, the
Uh-huh.
shelter itself, I don't believe charges the public, but the way it works in our parish is if someone wants to surrender an animal, you have to call the municipality that's in charge. For example, we have Morgan City, Berwick, and some unincorporated areas. So in unincorporated areas, the sheriff's department's in charge. But in one of these towns, if you want to surrender, you have to call the police, and then the police have to dispatch an animal warden, and then the animal warden has to pick up the animal and bring them to the shelter. And each of these cities has a contract with the shelter where they're responsible for X amount of dollars for the shelter to intake that animal on behalf of the city. So some of the cities pass on that fee to people so that they don't have to incur it.
If that fee didn't exist, do you think that would make a difference?
I think folks would certainly surrender more often rather than dump, but that's then an animal gets killed to make space for the next one coming in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending cycle.
It truly is. It's exactly what it feels like. It's just going to bed and bracing yourself, knowing that there's going to be more calls and there's never going to be an end to it. So you can't really have that sort of mindset. You just have to live with knowing that there's not an end in sight and we're just doing the best we can for the creatures that do reach us.
Would you like to see something that would be done more on a parish level or do you think it would be more beneficial for it to be like on a state level?
I think it starts with the parishes. I think it's too broad to go in and ask the state to do something because then each parish is still going to have to figure out their own way to do it, especially in a lot of these rural parishes that don't have resources. Hell, there are some parishes in Louisiana that don't even have an animal shelter. They have no animal control, no animal shelter. And I can't even imagine living in a place like that. At least we have the bare minimum here. So honestly, there needs to be a larger allotment of funds for animal resources across the state, as well as I do how hard it is to convince people to either add more taxes or get them to allocate funds separately.
You told us about Olive. Do you have any other rescue stories that you were involved in?
Oh, yeah. Most recently, we had this little bitty tiny puppy, one of the smallest creatures I've ever seen, who came to us with most of his face and ears. The skin was just burnt off. So the story behind it is he showed up at this guy's house, and the guy said it was for his neighbor, and the children were mistreating him. And he took him and ran to the local dollar store. And there was a language barrier. I believe he spoke Spanish. And the woman who worked the register said he just came in with this puppy, and all she understood was it needs help. Kids were mistreating it. And she took the puppy home and tried to tend to the wounds. And after about a week, she realized it was too much for her. So then they reached out to us. So we took in this little puppy, not knowing even what breed he was, with all of this skin missing. And he looked like a little lamb with the pink face and the white fuzz. So he became Lamb Chop, and he went a little viral. We had people from all over the country following his story. It was picked up by the Pet Collective, and he just was such a little rock star. After a lot of intensive care and a really long hospital stay, he got all of his skin back, his fur grew back, and now he's living with the most incredible family out of New Orleans, actually. One of the vet techs from the last clinic that cared for him ended up taking him home.
Oh, wonderful. So did you ever figure
Yeah.
out like how he got the burns?
We think it was chemical. That's what the doctor said. That was the closest thing we could figure out was chemical burns on his face and ears. And some of it had even looked like the liquid dripped onto his arms. He had some patches missing. So at first we thought it was immune disorder because you really don't see that much trauma to that degree. And then once they started investigating and how quickly he healed with nothing else wrong with him, they definitely suspect he was chemically burned.
Wow.
But he's good now. And we also partnered, I do want to shout out Trampled Rose Rescue. They are an incredible group out of New Orleans that do a ton of good work. And they partnered with us on Little Lamb Chop's case because, so you can imagine, the fees on him were quite
Right.
high.
Yeah, especially for something like that. I've never dealt with any kind of like chemical burns or anything like that. I've had an actual burn, not a chemical burn. I can only imagine how much treatment that poor little guy needed.
Oh, yeah. He was treated with the same ointment they use on human burn victims. I mean, it was full time care for a little man.
Yeah, I know you said that in your area, there's that cost for spay neuter, and that seems to be what the barrier is for a lot of people that they don't have
Hmm.
the money to pay for the spay neuter. Do you have a lot of people that do want it and just can't get it, or do you really think that there is also that kind of lack to even knowing what spay neuter is, or to even thinking it is something that is essential?
It's a bit of both. We've seen a lot on Facebook of people asking, where can I go? I was quoted this locally and it's unreasonable. But a lot of times, whenever we see posts of missing animals or roaming animals that do have owners, or even people that just aren't really caring for them properly, we always reach out and ask, hey, can we help getting this pet spay neutered? And a lot of times they're just like, no, not interested, or I want to breed them. We hear that a lot, unfortunately.
For the ones that just say, "No, not interested," and they aren't into breeding, do they ever give you an excuse as to why?
Not really. They just get really short with us. And I suspect a lot of times it's because they do want puppies and want to
Mhm.
sell them. We see tons of puppies for sale around here, especially bully breeds. I think it's just ignorance in the other cases. People don't
Mhm.
realize, if I'm aware of you to the point where I'm asking if you need help, it's because I've seen your pet roaming. And if they're unaltered and roaming, obviously that's going to generate more lives. And there's nowhere for all of these creatures to go. So the bare minimum you could do, if you're not going to be responsible and keep them from roaming, is to alter. But we do receive a lot of pushback.
Now in your
Yeah.
parish, do you think is it more of a problem with the dogs or cats, or is it like both?
Oh, the cat situation here is awful. My rescue partner runs TNR,
Mhm.
Trap Spay Neuter Release. 4 days a week, goes out by herself, sets traps around the parish, gets these cats, brings them to Lafayette or New Orleans, which again, that's an hour and a half either
Hmm.
direction. And she fundraises for this alone. We don't have, I think one of the cities maybe has $2,000 allocated towards TNR per year, which
Hmm.
goes extremely quickly. But she's been fixing at least 30 cats a week for the last, I can't tell you how many weeks, and it's still just out of control. We spoke at a parish council meeting about it in one of our cities about 6 or 7 months ago, maybe. And instead of coming up with a plan to help us work on it, they passed a law to fine people for feeding stray animals. Like literally
Nice.
passed a law that made it illegal to feed strays. So
Okay.
I spoke at the meeting trying to tell them that's not going to solve the problem. All that does is make the cats more hungry, which makes them get into things more, and then disease spreads more rampantly. The solution is to let us feed them in these controlled colonies so that we can methodically trap, spay, neuter, and release them because feral cats have a standard life. I think it's only about 3 years because they're feral. So if we get support in this TNR program, then within a few years, you see the numbers drop significantly whenever they stop reproducing. But unfortunately, we have not had the backup to be able to do that as much as it needs.
Wow. And that amazes me too, because it's like when you think of them as being a nuisance, first off, when you do the trap, neuter, and release, all those nuisance type behaviors usually will stop. But
Exactly.
if you don't feed them, they're going to be a nuisance because they're going to be looking for food. So
Exactly.
it's easier to just stop it before it starts and just feed. So now, can I ask if there are any advocates that are listening that wanted to chime in on that? Who would they contact?
Absolutely. So Carla Cates is the one who runs ARC in our parish, and she's the one I'm speaking of that single-handedly does the TNR. So we not only need more advocates raising a voice about this, but we need help. If we had more people willing to sit out and trap and do some of these trips to get them fixed, then we could up the numbers and make a difference more quickly.
And what about like calling the parish or anything like that, or sending emails? Would they be able to get that contact information from Carla?
Yeah, absolutely. Carla and I can put a list together of who our council people are and who would be the contact for that sort of thing.
Hopefully, some of our listeners can reach out and
Amazing.
help you out with that. So,
Yeah, thank you so much.
before we end the call, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think rescue is largely an echo chamber. And I love that you're doing what you're doing to get some more people listening and intrigued and involved. But I know within our Facebook groups, whenever we preach about things like spay neuter, I think it falls on the ears and eyes of folks who are already doing that. If there's a way to just speak to your friends, if you see someone wanting to breed their dog, implore them to go take a walk through your shelter. Anyone considering buying a dog or breeding at all, even vets, I would love for them to go walk through their local shelter and just look in some of those eyes and see if you can still breed or buy a breeder dog at that point. That's a huge thing we see a lot around here is there's a ton of doodle breeders. And it's so heartbreaking because a lot of those are still ending up in shelters and rescues. I think the breeding is just, I'm really stuck on that right now.
Yeah, I always see that too, like on social media, where you'll see people asking, "Oh, where can I go get such and such a breed of dog or such and such a breed of cat?" And whenever I see that, I'm
Mhm.
always like, at the animal shelter.
Exactly. Or the ones that are posting asking for a stud dog. I can't even. I have had to block so many people on Facebook because I'm like, you know what? It's not my circus here. The only way to truly make a difference is through education. So I think it's also important. We've been working a long time to try to figure out a program where we can go into schools and talk to these kids, especially some of the younger ones, in a really gentle way about what's okay and what's not. Because I know, especially in smaller areas, we're behind in the times. Like, it's like we're a few generations back in some areas over here. And whenever these people grow up, you're just repeating behaviors that you see. So if these children are growing up in a home where a dog is chained outside in the elements or getting hit or not getting proper care, the only way you're really going to get through those children and break the cycle is to be like, no, that's not normal. That's not okay. This is what we do instead. So I think programs like that are super important. And it's just one of the many things on our list that we want to implement. But again, we're a very small organization, so it's really difficult.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. And I'm grateful for folks like you too, not only with this podcast, but the other work you're doing. And we're all just volunteers. So I think people lose sight of that too whenever we get these calls and people get frustrated whenever we don't stop everything right away. And it's, guys, we have jobs and lives as well. We're not getting paid for this.
Yeah, that definitely is something that I see all the time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, I'm really grateful for the platform and everything you do. And this has been so lovely.
That's it for today's episode. I want to thank everybody for listening and supporting us. If you want to take that an extra step, consider becoming a member. We just added this to our website, animalposse.com. Scroll down, look for the support tab. Our membership program is going to help us directly support animals in need, whether that be through vaccinations, food, or spay neuter efforts.
Bars in the night, claws in the fight, whiskers twitch and tails take flight. They're calling in stories to spin from the wild to the heart within. Broken wings and hopeful springs, we're the voices for these things. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. The vet's got tips, the rescuer's grit, the foster homes where love won't quit. From a pup in the rain to a bird in pain, every soul's worth the strain. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail.